Now, folks, first off, online censorship could be coming to an end. Now, platforms on Meta, that's Facebook, Instagram, Threads, the Meta CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, he announced that the company is going to end its third-party fact-checking system and instead embrace community notes. And he said they want to do what they see on Elon Musk's X. They are actually going to model it after that, where the community, you and I and others, can actually leave notes on different posts and fact-check them ourselves. No more institutional fact-checking. And Meta, in their announcement, also stated they are planning to allow more speech by lifting restrictions on some topics that are part of mainstream discourse and focusing their enforcement on illegal and high-severity violations. Unless it violates the law, it might not get pulled down. Now, Zuckerberg posted a video on this yesterday, and he noted the problems that were caused by the censorship system that had been used previously, up until just now, actually. And he also explained how he plans to work with the incoming Trump administration to begin pushing back against censorship coming into the United States from Europe, and even suggesting that America could begin enforcing and spreading freedom of speech, freedom of expression in other countries. We will reverse course, in other words. Now, here's how Mark Zuckerberg explained this move. Watch this.
But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms.
Now, Zuckerberg goes on to explain in this video how this is all going to work, and he says that their plan is to get rid of their third-party fact-checkers, all those big media organizations and third-party organizations that believe they have the right to decide what is true and what's false, and they're going to replace those with a community note system, just like what you see on X. And that allows individuals like you and I to actually fact-check individuals. And we've seen how this works on X. It even leads to a lot of mainstream media and major figures being fact-checked by the community. Now, Zuckerberg notes that after Trump was first elected in 2016, the, quote, legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. And that was the case. Remember, the big narrative at the time was how Russian disinformation stole the American election. They were accusing Trump of colluding with Russia. It turned out to be fake. It turned out the people pushing the narrative of foreign disinformation rigging our election were lying. It was based on false information that was spread and included to the media. But look, despite that, the programs for censorship that were established as an extension of that, and all the content moderation systems, those were kept in place. But that brought about additional problems, and this is how Mark Zuckerberg explains what that caused. Watch this.
We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
Now look, I would personally have to agree. I have seen the so-called fact-checkers get their facts wrong in many, many cases. And many people have brought up the issue that we seem to need people who can fact-check the fact-checkers. A big problem is the so-called fact-checkers, they have tended to be just one side of the political debate. And this has led to accusations that political bias often taints their views of what's true and what's not. And this has become an even bigger issue when it comes to the dynamic between the legacy media and the rise of independent media, at least in my opinion. Some outlets have used their monopoly on these platforms to try to destroy and demonetize independent voices that would otherwise challenge them. And as that whole establishment system has now lost its credibility, the backlash of this is also affecting the whole platforms. This is why you see a lot of the media right now struggling to survive. And this is why a lot of platforms that adopted these censorship policies are also struggling. Maybe that's why we're seeing the censorship arms start to get lifted right now. People are fed up. They no longer trust these organizations, and they're looking elsewhere. And look, finally, I think a lot of these companies are realizing they have lost the trust of the public. The public users, and that's their user base, they no longer believe these people. But look, back to the new plans for Meta. Mark Zuckerberg adds they also plan to simplify their content policies and will start to lift policies on what they censor. Even topics that have become taboo on some of the big corporate media platforms, these topics could soon be opened up as fair game for public discourse. Watch this.
We're going to simplify our content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far.
Oh, hey, imagine that. But this is also part of the problem, right? If you try to protect one viewpoint from criticism, if you try to shield it from attacks, you also risk attacking any viewpoints of anybody else who sees things differently. Because the only way you can protect one view is by suppressing another, and that other is a person as well. Now look, while these policies are being framed as inclusive, as he mentions, many people felt that any opposing political views or systems of values, because some of this also ties into people's religious values, that these were suppressed and not able to be included in public discourse. Now look, not everybody thinks the same, and not everybody has the same beliefs, and so suppressing one in favor of another will obviously cause you problems, as we've seen it do. And it seems that from here on out, people will once again be able to have their open debates on these topics, even if the topics are deemed to be sensitive, meaning they're going to offend somebody, right? Now, like a few other key points, Zuckerberg notes they'll also end some of the automated systems that have been looking for content violations. They will still remove content that is illegal. And this is a policy that Elon Musk has also tried to maintain on X. He's basically saying, unless the content is illegal, I will not remove it. That has brought out additional problems in other countries where even public discourse is illegal, like many parts of Europe, parts of Latin America, and so on. But Zuckerberg addresses this. We'll get into it. And look, for everyone else, people will have to flag content individually. If someone is offended by something, they can flag it, and it's a much slower process. And also, look, civic content, meaning news, might be making a comeback as well. This means Facebook and Instagram and maybe Threads could again start promoting political content, something that they had suppressed quite a bit. They're not going to be doing that anymore. And look, also on a funny note, they're going to move the company's trust and safety and content moderation teams. They're going to take them out of California, and they're going to move these operations to Texas. And Zuckerberg actually suggests this is to reduce the bias of the teams themselves. And of course, look, California leans more left, Texas leans more right, and so this could mean a more conservative content moderation base if that does happen. We'll see how they do it. It also depends where you go in Texas, by the way. Now look, on this note, Meta has also appointed UFC president Dana White to the company's board of directors. Dana White, of course, has become fairly close to Trump as well. Now, White, well-known Trump supporter, and in fact, Trump appeared with him at some UFC games alongside each other. And this move is interesting. It suggests that Meta is looking to tap into Donald Trump's circle in an effort to get closer to the incoming administration. And Zuckerberg's actually saying as much as with this as well. Now, this is actually something that goes back to something from Meta that was announced a few days ago also. Their newly appointed Chief Global Affairs Officer is also a noted Republican. MSNBC said this: Facebook parent company Meta is replacing its president of global affairs, Nick Clegg, with Joel Kaplan, the company's current policy vice president and a former Republican Party staffer. It notes the shakeup comes 3 weeks before President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, and it's the latest sign of how tech companies are positioning themselves for a new administration in Washington. It notes that Kaplan was White House Deputy Chief of Staff under former President George W. Bush, and he appeared at the New York Stock Exchange with Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and Donald Trump in December. It notes he also attended Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing in 2018 as a personal friend, causing a controversy for the social media company. Controversial maybe of the media itself. A lot of media do that, right? A lot of news outlets say, this is controversial. Controversial according to whom? Oftentimes what you have is a news outlet makes a public statement and makes controversy, and then all the other media say it's controversial because media that agree with them have stated it's controversial. That tends to be the circle of news and how they manufacture that type of narrative. But look, one of the bigger points here, at least as it relates to the incoming Trump administration, is this. Mark Zuckerberg notes they will start working with the Trump administration to push free expression as a global issue. Watch this.
Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it.
Now look, this could be big. A lot of pressure to censor content comes from other countries. A lot of the pressure that big tech companies have is not from within the United States. Brazil, for example, has forced censorship onto X, even with Elon Musk trying to stop it, even right here in the United States. The United Kingdom, the European Union, they have been pressuring American tech companies to enforce European laws on the United States on censorship. And look, ending this in and of itself, that'd be a big thing enough, but what Zuckerberg is suggesting here is that they may take this a step further. They will not just be protecting Americans from censorship and upholding the Constitution. They will be trying to uphold free expression globally. He even mentions China. Imagine freedom of expression in China, or America's going to cut them off trade-wise, right? This could potentially make the entire world just a bit more free. So we'll see how that goes, folks.